Hello, kia ora, I'm Philip Duncan. Thank you for joining us. We're tracking a lot of weather in the New Zealand area this week with a deluge on the way. 0.5 metre of rain or more falling in just a few days for parts of the west coast and around Nelson, and some pretty big totals for northern New Zealand as well. So let's get into it. We kick off with the animated wind map, and it's finally showing what I was talking about last week, that this big area of high pressure is parked in a problematic position. It is so far north, it is scooping up all this tropical air, bringing it down and feeding it into this low. Although this is the main area of concern, where it starts to funnel in like a V and pointing directly towards places like Nelson and the west coast and northern parts of New Zealand. So this atmospheric river, which is what it sounds like, it's a valley in the sky full of water, and it's feeding into one place, and that is going to be the South Island to begin with anyway. Meanwhile, this low, by the way, stuck around Australia for a few days now, still over Tasmania, with those westerly winds blowing through for places like Sydney and Melbourne, but more of a southerly or sou'wester, a little bit cooler around in Adelaide. So let's get into the rainfall in New Zealand. The heaviest rain on this map in the dark blue, surrounded by the bright blue. So it's right down here. And we are literally at the last part of the scale. The 400 to 500 millimetres, that's what we're seeing in these three areas. That's a lot of rain, especially up here around Nelson, which I think is most exposed to this heavy rain. The way it's feeding in is straight into this area. So some of those mountains and like the Nelson Ranges may actually provide a little bit of shelter for some other areas a little bit further south. So the heavy rain is certainly widespread around the South Island, and it spills over into Marlborough as well. You're still talking about a couple of 100 millimetres in that pale blue area. So that's significant for this normally dry, very sunny part of the country. In fact, it only takes about 30 to 60 millimetres to cause a few slips and a few roading issues. And we're seeing rainfall totals of 400 to 500 millimetres around places like Takaka over here. Now in the North Island, the rainfall totals at this stage aren't quite as big. That's because that high pressure system is actually a bit closer to you. But we're still getting up to around 80, 90, 100 millimetres in this area to the north. And in fact, some areas in Northland and Taranaki, and I still think a couple of areas around Auckland or Coromandel Peninsula could go a little bit higher, and that could be getting you up into that 125 mark. So a lot of rain on the way for New Zealand. Go to ruralweather.co.nz if you really want to clearly see when it ramps up, when it eases, and what your daily totals are. The rain graphs at Rural Weather, which we're going to bring over to Weather Watch in the future, will really help make sense of all of this. So here we are for Tuesday's setup. Now look at this. The high is just ginormous, stretches all the way up. Tonga is here. Samoa, Fiji, Vanuatu, New Caledonia. This airflow coming from them and straight down into New Zealand. And as it comes straight and down to Nelson, the ranges all around Nelson that normally protect you and give you the beautiful sunny weather that you get in winter will do the opposite with this. It will hold up the rain clouds and make those totals greater. We've also got a squash zone. That's when you've got a big high and a low pressure system nearby, and it's windy in the middle. So that's what we're getting through here with gusts to gale force as we go later into Tuesday, although really it's more of a Wednesday, Thursday issue for northern areas. Now as we go through to Wednesday, you can see what I mean. We've got more low pressure out here. High pressure is expanding. It's now 1041. So that high has grown in size. So as it grows in size, that creates more of these isobars, and that pushes into these low pressure ones, and that's what makes it windy. So we're seeing a lot of wind coming through here on Wednesday, pretty blustery with gales developing and maybe some gusts even getting into severe gale. Met Service are already got watches and warnings out on the Weather Watch website. You can see those under warnings, but the rain carries on, the low pressure carries on, and there's a big stormy system well south of Australia. Sorry, I'm not mentioning you much, but a windy westerly flowing through for you. Perth has got a colder change coming a bit later on through Wednesday afternoon. Now let's go to Wednesday night and going into Thursday morning. You can see this atmospheric river we talk about. So here is the high, and we've got low pressure just here, and right in between where it's windiest in that squash zone is also where the rain is. Now this map shows 3-hour rainfall accumulation. It's really good to sort of generally see where the rain is going to be falling and where the heaviest falls will be. So the white, light grey shading, that indicates just sort of normal rain. Could be still a little heavy, but not major enough to sort of flare up like the pink zones do there. And that basically means when it's getting the pink-purple shading that you're getting into around 30, 40 millimetres over just 3 hours. So that's pretty intense. And you're seeing that around Nelson, you're seeing that down around the west coast, but you're not really seeing it to the north here. The rainfall total's not quite as high, but there's still a chance of flooding, even in parts of the upper North Island. So lunchtime Thursday still sees rain and wind around northern areas, but as it turns a little more northerly, that shelters places like Auckland a little bit. Northland gets in the way a wee bit of that airflow. Winds aren't quite as bad as they could be for that area, but blustery nor'westers elsewhere, still pouring with rain around parts of the South Island on Thursday. Dry around the eastern side of Australia, but that next low coming in with a burst of wind, rain and showers. And by Friday, you can see that westerly change in Australia clearly punching through and out into the Tasman. But we've still got this system being blocked by that high. So it is still raining in the top of the South Island as we get towards the end of the week. Still got those warm northerlies. Won't be as frosty. In fact, I don't think there'll be any frost this week. It'll be very surprising if after tonight there's a chance for frost really, other than the very, very south of the country where Southland, you're the place to be this week. The weather is looking better there than anywhere else. And we get to the end of the week and start of the weekend, and in comes that westerly from Australia. So westerly winds all the way from the Indian Ocean right across the southern part of Australia and back into New Zealand. By the way, that's a bit of a hint of spring. Now, while we're talking about spring, the last thing I want to show you, we ran a poll at WeatherWatch last week, just on Twitter. Not a huge amount of votes. We've got 150 votes. That gives you a bit of a sign. Is spring showing up? Are there signs of spring? Look at that, 79.3%. I'm surprised with that because normally when I bring this up at this time of the year, all the naysayers tell me, no, there's still another 6 weeks to go. Well, other people are certainly seeing signs of spring. Buds, daisies, flower, pollen, hay fever. And after this week coming up, probably not so much in the way of frosts either. But that does not mean we're done with winter. There could easily be a snowstorm or big frost still yet to come through. We're not out of the woods really until we get to even as far as November. That's all from me. Lots to cover there. Don't forget, if you need the rain maps, just go to weatherwatch.co.nz, click on maps and radars, and you can see that rain accumulation map. And for some of you, you'll prefer the colouring because red means extreme rain, not blue. So some of you prefer that. Anyway, that's all from me. We'll see you tomorrow, Tuesday, with our next update.